It's not my intent to just be a copycat, but once in a while I do come across a fly that I particularly like, and since this channel's primary purpose is to record for my own sake the flies that I tie, this is a featherbender Mayfly Nymph. So I am tying it on a number 14 bent shank 3x long hook. I'm using brown thread. The tail is a few barbs from the center tail feather of a pheasant. And I think because it's a 3x long hook, I want a shorter than shank length tail. I'll go ahead and tie that in. Wrap under it a little wrap under it once or twice just to get those to stand up, and then I can just wrap those into the front of the hook and clip them out. Probably should have put my weight on before this, but I'll go ahead now and take my thread back so I have room in front to wrap in some weighted wire. And just the general rule with weights on nymphs is that you weight them where and to the extent that you want them to float sink, and how you want them to react in the water. So I'll go ahead and come back up over that weighted wire, particularly on this hook, which is actually a fine wire hook, but I like this shape for nymphs. And I'll bring my thread back to the tail again. And for the rib, I am using some 3/0 brown thread. I will just double that around my tie-in thread. And wrap up over that to grab it. Get that up out of the way. The abdomen is just a little piece of marabou, and I'm going to wrap over that marabou a couple times just lightly. If I take my marabou and stick it up underneath of my thread, it's just light wraps because I'm going to pull it through. Just pull the marabou all the way through till I have just the tips left, and then I can wrap in tight over those tips. Bring my thread up to where my thorax is going to be, and then I'm going to just wrap that marabou around the hook shank for the abdomen. This and the gills are the two things that really attracted me to this particular nymph pattern. It will give it a little bit of a fuzzy look. Go ahead and tie that off. And I can clip that out. And then I'll take the two threads and I'm going to counter wrap them. See if I can keep them together. catch that thread in. Clip out the extra. The legs and the thorax back are also barbs from the pheasant. So I'll tie in a clump on the back side of the hook and push those points away, and then wrap up over the top of that till I get back to where the abdomen starts. Take another clump of the same size, measure those out for length, and tie these in on the front side of the hook. And then try to separate those, pull. I want half of those in the back and half of those in the front. And then I'll wrap back up over the top of those to the beginning of the abdomen. And that'll be the casing, the back casing on the thorax. And then one of the other pieces that particularly attracted me to this fly was the gill material. And this is ostrich plume. So I'll just tie a piece of ostrich plume in. Depending on the size of the fly that's being tied, I use one or more of these, I guess we call them ostrich herls. And wrap the thorax with that, and that will give me a fluffy gill look on the bottom side of the thorax. And then kind of try to control what I have up here in the head. And if I have some fluff sticking out over in the front of the head, I guess that's just part of this fly. Clip out my extra. Pull everything up to create the back. That'll push down on those ostrich fibers, fibbits. Is that what we call them? Barbules. And then wrap up over that, keeping it together, keeping it centered on top, keeping my eye clean. I'll go ahead and wrap underneath, get it to stand up, and then clip that out. Then I'm going to take my legs and bend them backwards on each side. And then tie up over those. Keeping my eye open and creating the head. Go ahead and put a whip finish on that. Just push my scissors against my thread to cut it out. I'll put a dab of diluted goop on that head. Push a feather through the eye to make sure it's open and clean.